Back on February 28, 2026, a joint U.S. and Israeli strike killed Iran's supreme leader and effectively slammed the Strait of Hormuz shut. Iran's response has been to set up a toll booth at the most important choke point on Earth, demanding up to $2 million from any ship that wants to pass. However, over the past 3 weeks, the U.S. Navy has been quietly humiliating Tehran, guiding dozens of massive commercial vessels straight through that blockade in complete darkness. And when one ship refused to play along, the U.S. military sent a very loud, very explosive message into its engine room. This is essentially a geopolitical underground railroad running right under the nose of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. So, in this video, we're going to explain how CENTCOM's dark mode operation actually works, why the US blew the engine out of a commercial bulk carrier, and how Iran's $2 million extortion racket is already collapsing. Let's start with what's now being called Operation Dark Mode. Since the US formally launched a naval blockade of Iranian ports around April 13th, daily crossings through the strait have collapsed by roughly 88%. For context, this strait normally carries around 20% of the world's oil, with 120 to 140 ships passing every single day. So instead of trying to fight Iran's patrols head-on, CENTCOM has been coordinating commercial vessels through quietly using a technique known as MCON, or emissions control. According to reporting by the New York Times, these ships switch off their AIS transponders, cut their lights, and hug the Omani coastline, far from Iran's drone and missile concentrations near Keshem Island. Crucially, U.S. warships don't physically escort them. Instead, Aegis-equipped destroyers and E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft build a complete real-time picture of the strait, allowing the Navy to thread these ships through without ever being seen. In the last 3 weeks alone, roughly 70 commercial vessels have successfully slipped past Iranian patrols this way. Iran's radar, geometrically complicated by the strait's geography, simply cannot match that level of situational awareness. Essentially, the most heavily watched waterway on the planet has become a ghost town that the IRGC can't even monitor in its own backyard. But CENTCOM isn't just sneaking ships through, it's enforcing its own rules with extreme prejudice. And this brings us to the MV Lian Star. On May 29th, this Gambian-flagged bulk carrier was caught in the Gulf of Oman, attempting to transit toward an Iranian port in direct violation of the U.S. blockade. Now, this is the key detail. The U.S. didn't strike it because it paid Iran's toll. It struck it because the ship was trying to reach Iran and feed the regime's war machine. After the crew ignored more than 20 separate warnings to alter course, a U.S. aircraft fired an AGM-114 Hellfire missile directly into the vessel's engine room. Notice the precision here. The U.S. deliberately targeted the engine, not the waterline or the fuel tanks, disabling the ship and leaving it adrift without sinking it or causing an environmental catastrophe. That's a calculated message to every ship owner on the planet, and it wasn't a one-off. On June 2nd, a Botswana-flagged tanker called the MT Lexi was disabled in the exact same way near Iran's main oil terminal at Kharg Island. According to CENTCOM, U.S. forces have now disabled at least 6 vessels and redirected roughly 122 ships to keep them out of Iran's reach entirely. So why is Iran so desperate to control this water in the first place? Ultimately, because the regime is broke. In May, Iran launched what it calls the Persian Gulf Strait Authority, demanding manifests, transit permits, and fees of up to $2 million per vessel. Tellingly, Tehran is demanding payment in Chinese yuan and Bitcoin, deliberately rooting around the U.S. financial system, which tells you just how isolated the regime now is. It's essentially state-sanctioned piracy, and the U.S. response was brutal. The authority became operational around May 18th. By May 27th, the U.S. Treasury had already designated it under counterterrorism sanctions, making it a crime to comply. It lasted 9 days before Washington effectively outlawed it. It's also worth noting Iran signed but never ratified the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, so they're playing toll booth operator in a strait they don't even have a solid legal claim to control. And major corporations are calling the bluff. Chevron CEO Mike Wirth publicly confirmed the company will not pay a single cent to Tehran. The stakes here are enormous, with Brent crude climbing to roughly $97 a barrel by June 2nd after ceasefire talks collapsed. That single number was supposed to be Iran's entire economic strategy, and the U.S. is working to ensure the regime never sees a penny of it. Ultimately, Iran thought it could hold a fifth of the world's oil supply hostage and force the West to pay a ransom. Instead, CENTCOM has turned the strait into a shadow corridor where American-backed ships vanish into the dark and anyone sailing toward Tehran gets a missile in their engine block. The blockade hasn't broken the American economy. It simply exposed how powerless the IRGC's Navy truly is. That's all I have for you guys. My name is Sam. I'm going to give you guys one guess in the comments. How long until Iran tries to blindly fire into the dark to hit one of these ghost ships? Let me know down below, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.